The two best words in sports are Game 7. Today, our Miami Marlins have an opportunity to advance to the World Series with a win against the Mets. If we lose, though, the season's over. Our Marlins have lost in Game 7s in each of the past 2 seasons, and we're hoping that the third time's the charm. We can finally win a Game 7, and we can get back to the World Series for a second consecutive season, where we look to win the world title once and for all. So in the last episode, we split Games 5 and 6. Both games were certainly interesting ones. Coming into it 2-2, we lost Game 5 in New York by the score of 4-3, and for a second straight game, we blew it at the end with Emmanuel Clase letting up a walk-off home run in the bottom of the 9th inning to Austin Meadows. Clase has lost 2 games in a row. And this is a guy who we paid big money to in the offseason to close out games for us here in October. And, well, he has struggled. 2 games in a row has been largely responsible for us losing. Game 6 was an elimination game, and we did survive, winning at 7-6. Started a little bit slowly, allowing runs in each of the first 2 innings, but we definitely picked it up towards the middle of the game. The Mets got a big homer in the 9th inning from Ronnie Mauricio, but that was not enough for them to pull off the comeback and get the win. Max Butterball started off really strong early on, but then he kind of fell apart. Luis Severino was overall pretty solid. Casey Mize was decent in Game 5. He got the start there. And today we get Edward Cabrera on the mound in Game 7, our best pitcher, our ace, our back-to-back Cy Young winner, and the guy who we would feel most comfortable with handing our season to. The offense has certainly been a mixed bag throughout the entire postseason. There's been some good and there's been some bad. I think it's going to be a challenge today facing off against former number 1 overall pick Ryan Stevenson, who is a lefty, and his postseason ERA barely exceeds 1 on the year. Pitching-wise, I believe fully in Edward Cabrera. He's been the best pitcher in baseball over the last 3 seasons. He's pitched in some big games for us. Last year in Game 7 of the World Series on 3 days rest, he was excellent. Did we win that game? No, but it was not his fault. We fully trust Edward Cabrera here to pitch this game, and I think we're in a good spot with him because he hasn't pitched that often over the last couple of weeks. He obviously struggled in that first playoff game, but since then he's been really good. He pitched in do-or-die Game 5 against Chicago through 7 scoreless. Then he pitched Game 3 against the Mets. That was the game we won 17-3, and we didn't need to use him that much. He only threw 5 innings, allowing 1 run. He's thrown 5 innings in the last 10 days, which means he is going to be able to have a full workload today, and as long as he's pitching well, we'll be able to keep him out there. So let's get this show on the road. Game 7 of the 2028 NLCS. The winner advances to the World Series with the Minnesota Twins awaiting. The Marlins, of course, made the World Series last year, losing in a heartbreaking 7-game series to the Tampa Bay Rays. And our Marlins are 0-2 all-time in Game 7s. In Season 4 in the NLCS, we lost in Game 7 to Philadelphia, here at home. Last season, year number 5, we obviously lost Game 7 of the World Series, here at home, against Tampa Bay. And now we've got another Game 7 back at home once again with the division rival New York Mets facing off against us, looking to make it back to the World Series themselves for the first time since 2015. With the Mets starting a lefty, we're going to have Jacob Berry start at third instead of Khalil Watson, who may enter the game later as a pinch hitter. Here's Edward Cabrera, who's won 2 consecutive Cy Youngs. Of course, he has an MVP in there as well. Did not have a good first postseason start, but he's only allowed 1 run over 12 innings in his last 2 postseason starts, grabbing the win in each of them. He'll face off against Brandon Nimmo with a weak dribbler. Going to be a close play here. Throw to first by Cabrera's in time, and he retires to the side here in the top of the first inning. Quick start for Cabrera. Hopefully he'll be able to keep the pitch count down so the Marlins can have him go as long as they need him. Let's take a look at Ryan Stevenson, the former number 1 overall draft pick out of Fresno State, who the Mets are basically putting their season into his left arm. Stevenson has been really good in 2 postseason starts, going 13 innings, only allowing 2 runs and has a whip of .69. Nice. Isaac Stu is up, coming off a big Game 6, and he looks like he's right back to business. Stu rips it in the gap. It goes off the wall. He's got to be thinking 2, and is safe with a double. Stu has really struggled throughout the NLCS, but in Game 6, he was awesome, homered twice, and was a big reason why the Marlins season is still alive. Woody Landry now the full count, draws a walk. Tough pitch to lay off. The slider was just barely high and outside, but it is outside of the strike zone nonetheless. So now there's 2 on and a big opportunity for Jazz Chisholm as he puts this ball on the ground. Second baseman Santiago Espinal tags the runner, and then he doesn't get the throw to first in time. If Espinal had just flipped it over to short, Bobby Witt Jr. could have made the throw to first and the inning would have been over. But instead, there's now 2 runners on the corners and a massive opportunity for Luis Rengifo. The biggest at bat of the game so far already in the first inning as he finds himself behind 1-2, swinging and missing at the low changeup. That pitch was in the strike zone, not necessarily a bad decision, but just a great pitch. And here again, slider barely in the zone, grounder to short. Witt flips it over to Espinal, and Ryan Stevenson does get out of the inning. Wasn't pretty. He allowed 2 base runners, and the Marlins had an opportunity to do some damage. But ultimately, they fall short, and nobody scores here in the first. Let's move it into the second now. The catcher, Francisco Alvarez, leads things off. I feel like Alvarez overall has been fairly disappointing in this series himself as he draws a walk on the sinker. That pitch was in the strike zone. If you look at the bottom left, should have been called a strike, but Cabrera does not get the call. Josh Naylor goes down to the curveball. Good pitch by Cabrera, his first K of the day. Here's his second. Got Bobby Witt Jr. on the curveball. The inning should be over if not for the bad call letting Alvarez reach base. It's Meadows, the walk-off hero from Game 5, who gets that one past the diving glove of Jazz Chisholm for a base hit. The Mets now with 2 on, 2 away, and they've got a huge opportunity themselves for Yoan Moncada, who's been great throughout the postseason as he swings and misses on the circle change. Finds himself behind in the count, 1-2. Cabrera's got to get out of this jam. Moncada hitting .341 in October as he doesn't get fooled by the inside slider. Count evens up back at 2-2, and Cabrera's probably going to have to throw a strike again. Got him looking on the low and inside sinker. So Cabrera gets out of it, allowing 2 base runners, albeit Alvarez never should have gotten on. And had they made the right call, I don't think Meadows would have gotten on either, since that hit was with 2 outs. But that's neither here nor there. Beggars can't be choosers. We got out of the inning without allowing any runs. Bottom 2, Jesus Sanchez checks his swing. Umpire says he went around, although I think that pitch was in the strike zone anyway, so I think that's probably why they called it. Here's Brian De La Cruz. He hits this ball high and deep in right field. It's got some carry at the track, at the wall. It's gone! Solo home run for Brian De La Cruz, his second of the postseason. And the Marlins are on the board first here in Game 7 as it's 1-0. Brian De La Cruz has struggled for most of the postseason, but he's played really well over the last couple of games. So much so that he leads all Marlins in terms of the NL Postseason Player of the Year award, which feels odd because I feel like he was our worst offensive player for most of October, but he's really stepped it up here late. I will say, in both of our prior Game 7 losses, De La Cruz homered in both of those games as well. Is it a bad omen that he homered again, or does he just live for the big moment and happens to really play well in these Game 7 settings? Jacob Berry strikes out on the changeup, but still a successful inning as Brian De La Cruz with another Game 7 home run. That's 3 in his 3 Game 7s of his career as we move into the third. Ronnie Mauricio, single into left, and the Mets start the inning with a base runner. We'll see if they can do some damage here. Santiago Espinal goes down looking on the fastball. Good pitch there by Cabrera. He's up to 4 Ks here tonight. Brandon Nimmo now, well-known minority respecter, up with 2 away and 2 outs. Grounds it to second. Luis Rengifo makes the play. And overall, Edward Cabrera looks pretty good per usual. 3 scoreless innings. He's allowed a couple of base runners. But for the most part, he's been quite solid as expected. The one problem, though, is that his pitch count is already above 60, so that could be something to monitor. Bottom 3, Woody Landry up here with 2 away. Got a walk in his first at-bat, and this time the umpire says he went around. 1-2-3 inning for Ryan Stevenson, who retires the side. And overall, Stevenson's been pretty good himself, minus, obviously, the home run by Brian De La Cruz as we move into the 4th inning now Francisco Alvarez up for the Mets, and he strikes out on the slider. Alvarez has struck out a lot against the Marlins over these last 7 games, as that'll bring up Josh Naylor, and he will rip a single into center. Naylor was really good early in the postseason, and he was really good at the start of this series, but I feel like he's slowed down a bit, and the Mets are obviously going to need him to step up, being one of their best and most consistent offensive players. Bobby Witt Jr. grounds it to short. Could be a double play. 6, 4, 3! The Marlins get out of the inning. Good defense from Jazz, Rengifo, and Landry. And that's 4 scoreless for Edward Cabrera as we move into the bottom of the 4th. Jazz Chisholm leads things off, counts 2-2, and he goes down looking on the low fastball. That pitch did paint the corner at the strike zone, not necessarily a bad call, but compared to some of the other calls throughout the night, I don't think it was a great one. Here's Luis Rengifo, hits this one high and deep into left center. This ball is out of here! A solo home run for Luis Rengifo, his 3rd of the postseason, and the Marlins add to their lead as it's now 2-0. One of the few positives with the Mets starting a lefty is this really opens up opportunities for the guys in this lineup who mash against lefties. None more than Luis Rengifo, who really plays well against left-handed pitching. He's done it in the regular season. He's done it in the postseason. And now the Marlins lead 2-0. Jesus Sanchez now lefty on lefty crime. He rips it into left. It goes off the wall. I thought it had enough carry to go over the fence. Not quite. But it does end up as a double. The Marlins have struggled to get hits early in this game, but now they're starting to crush the ball. 2 away for Kevin Alcantara, who I think has been Miami's most consistent player here throughout the postseason. He draws a walk, and Sanchez steals 3rd. I think the Marlins were assuming the Mets were not going to expect him to run, and clearly that ended up being the case. Alvarez was very surprised to see him going. Runners on the corners now for Berry. He pops it up. Should be caught by Espinal, and it will. Again, not a bad inning, though, as the Marlins go deep with Luis Rengifo, and it's 2-0. As long as Edward Cabrera can keep his pitch count down, I'm confident that the Marlins are going to be able to hold on to this shutout, at least for the next couple of innings before the bullpen comes in. Yoan Moncada up 3-1, takes the high fastball, draws a walk. So the Mets get themselves a base runner here. That'll bring up Ronnie Mauricio, who strikes out on the sinker. Big pitch by Cabrera. Can he make it through 5 scoreless as he goes back to the top of the order? It's Manuel Margot, who will go down on the slider. Another scoreless inning for Edward Cabrera, and the best pitcher in baseball continues to play well at the biggest stage. 2-0 Miami as we go into the bottom of the 5th. The Marlins are around 4 innings away from getting back to the World Series, but they've still got work to do. Not a convincing lead by any stretch. MJ Melendez, another guy who mashes against lefties. Doesn't quite do it there as he strikes out. Woody Landry now with 2 away. Skies this one awfully high into center. I don't think it's got enough carry. Under it is Brandon Nimmo, and he will make the grab. So Ryan Stevenson's made it through 5, only having allowed 2 runs, both of which have been off of homers. Hasn't gotten any run support, though. Edward Cabrera has looked like the ace that we all know he is. Nimmo, sharp grounder up the middle. Nice play by Jazz Chisholm. Although it looks like Nimmo is safe. That'll be an infield single. Good hustle. And now the Marlins allow a runner. That'll bring up Alvarez. Grounder to short. Could be a double play. Rengifo to first. Gets clobbered, but still makes the play. Brandon Nimmo may never beat the allegations. If that was Bobby Witt Jr. at shortstop, I'm quite certain he wouldn't have slid into his leg. Nonetheless, the Marlins get out of the inning. Again, not allowing any runs yet as we go bottom 6. Mason Miller comes out of the bullpen for Stevenson. Overall, I feel like Ryan Stevenson had a pretty good Game 7 start. He didn't allow a ton of base runners. It's just that his offense has given him nothing. Jazz Chisholm gets plunked on the kneecap, just the way Dan Campbell likes it. Shout out, go Lions. That'll bring up Luis Rengifo now. Homered in his last at-bat. Bloops this one into left, and it will drop for a hit as Margot is unable to make the play. So right when Stevenson's taken out of the game, the Marlins get 2 base runners and quite the opportunity to add to this lead. Big at-bat here for Jesus Sanchez with 2 on and nobody out. And Sanchez swings and misses at the changeup. Good pitch by Mason Miller for the first out of the inning. That'll bring up Brian De La Cruz, who homered in his last at-bat. The consistent Game 7 hero draws a walk. Game 7 De La Cruz is different. I wouldn't want to pitch to him either. You know what that means? The bases are loaded. Dear God. Full count for Kevin Alcantara. Rips it up the middle for a base hit. One run scores, it's 3-0. Second run scores, it's 4-0. And De La Cruz is safe at third. A big hit here by Kevin Alcantara to double the lead for the Miami Marlins. This young kid continuing to make big-time plays here in the month of October. And Miami strengthens their lead, and they've got an opportunity to get more. Khalil Watson might have other plans, though. Can he make it to first? Not quite. It's a double play, inning over. The Marlins do get two there, and they are continuing to beat away from the bases loaded mantra as we move into the seventh. Cabrera still in the game, facing off against Josh Naylor, who takes a sinker looking now behind 1-2. Cabrera looks like he might make it through 7 as he gets rocked by a comebacker to the leg coming in at 97. That one's got to sting a little bit. I'm getting flashbacks from when Sandy Alcantara got pelted on the leg in Game 6 of the World Series last year, only to completely blow that Game 7 on basically one leg. Cabrera's going to shrug it off. He's going to stay in the game, and I think he'll be fine. But I'd be lying if I said that didn't take me back to that moment that basically lost the Marlins the World Series last year. Bobby Witt Jr. rips it into right. That'll go for a double. Cabrera allows 2 early runners here to start the 7th. And the Marlins are going to pull the plug. They're going to take him out here largely because not so much of the injury, but because his pitch count is getting really high. He's allowed 2 early hits, including a double to Bobby Witt. And obviously, we do trust Edward Cabrera to make it out here. But I think it's time for the back-end bullpen of death to finish things off. Another great Game 7 start for Edward Cabrera, who unsurprisingly had a really good outing here, again on the biggest stage, allowing 0 runs so far, knock on wood, in 6 innings. He'll be replaced by Camilo Doval, who's only allowed 1 run in 7.2 postseason innings. Now, he's got an upwards hill to climb with 2 runners in scoring position and nobody out, but the Marlins trust him. He's been their most consistent relief pitcher all year long. We'll see if he can do it. He'll face off against the back end of the order. That starts with Meadows with the walk-off in Game 5, and he strikes out on the cutter. Good start for Doval. He's still got to get 2 more, though. That'll bring us to Yoan Moncada. He's been great all month. 0 for 1 with a walk. Swing and a miss on the cutter, and now things look a lot less optimistic for the Mets, and they're going to need a base hit from Ronnie Mauricio, who's been pretty good in October, hitting nearly 300, OPS above 800. The 1-1. Mauricio swinging a miss on the outside sinker. He has himself behind 1-2. Arguably the biggest at bat of the game. If the Marlins can hold the Mets off the scoreboard here, they'll be in prime position to finish her off. The 1-2. Rips it in the left. Base hit. 1 run scores. Witt looks to score as well. The throw from Sanchez is in time! Jesus Sanchez guns down the runner. The Mets do get 1. Ronnie Mauricio does come up big, but the Mets don't really get any momentum there with a giant defensive play by Jesus Sanchez, who continues to be such an asset defensively for this team. His arm is electric. MJ Melendez thought he drew a walk there. Instead, it's called strike 3. Melendez was great in the NLDS against the Cubs, but has gone cold here. Isaac Stu, base hit into left. His second of the game, continuing to produce here in the most important games of the season. So Stu is aboard with 1 away as the Marlins look to add some runs. And Woody Landry's going to do just that. He's going Oppo Popo. 2-run blast for Woody Landry. And it looks like the Marlins are in the driver's seat here late in Game 7 of the National League Championship Series. Woody with his 4th home run of the postseason that leads the team, going 4-11 into left field and around 102 off the bat. The Marlins are in a good spot now, up by 5. I'm not going to say the game's over, but boy, it's looking good. Overall, not a great outing from the Mets bullpen so far. Richie Rado is going to come in out of the bullpen to replace the previous pitcher. He's allowed 2 runs in 3.1 postseason innings. We'll see if he can look to pad the bleeding. Jazz Chisholm Rips this one into left. Margot completely misplays it. Jazz Chisholm's on his high horse. Forget two. He's thinking triple. Throw to third. Not in time. Jazz Chisholm comes flying into third base with a one-out triple. And the Marlins have another run 90 feet away from home. Luis Rengifo's had a big game. 2 for 3 with a homer and a base hit. And it looks like he'll drive another run in here with a weakly hit ball over to second. In hindsight, should he have swung at that pitch? Probably not. But still a good at-bat because it drives in the run. Espinal never really had a chance to throw it home. And so it's now 7-1. Jesus Sanchez goes down looking. It feels like Sanchez continues to have such an unfair strike zone, I feel like. He does not get anywhere near the amount of lucrative calls as others, and we move into the 8th. Phil Bickford's going to come in. The Marlins aren't even going to use Johan Duran or Emmanuel Clase here. It looks like the Marlins want to save him for the World Series. They feel like this game's already won. Is that going to come back to bite them, or is their judgment correct? Manuel Margot draws a walk. Not a great start. Santiago Espinal rips a single into center. Okay, this really isn't a good start. I guess the Mets took the decision to bring Bickford in pretty personally. Not that Bickford's bad or anything. The guy only allowed 5 earned runs across the entire regular season. Big at bat for Brandon Nimmo. Flies it into left. Sanchez under it. He makes the grab, and the Marlins are 5 outs away from getting back to the World Series for a 4th time in team history and for a 2nd consecutive season. Francisco Alvarez now strikes out on the fastball. 4 more outs for Miami. Can they get the job done? Josh Naylor now, giant at bat for him. If the Mets want to start a rally, they've got to do it sooner than later as he swings and misses. Coming back down 6 runs in 1 inning is going to be an awfully tall task. So they need a big hit from Naylor, who grounds it past first and second for a single into right. De La Cruz with the throw to the plate. It's in time! Both Jesus Sanchez and Brian De La Cruz throw out runners here down the stretch of this game. Having these two in the corner outfield is one of the most unheralded parts of this team. We've got 2 outfielders in Sanchez and De La Cruz who just have absolute lasers. And they're showing them off here in the biggest game of the year. Michael King's going to come out of the bullpen for the Mets. He'll face off against De La Cruz, who just had the big defensive play as he rips this one into left center, reaching base for a 3rd time today, his 2nd hit. Along with homering in all 3 Game 7s that he's played in his career, he now has multiple hits in all 3 games. There's something to be said for a guy who steps up in the biggest moments, and Brian De La Cruz is doing exactly that. Kevin Alcantara goes down on the sinker. Good pitch by King. Now Khalil Watson. He goes down looking on the sinker. We'll see if, going back to the top of the order, if the Marlins can add to this lead as the Mets make another pitching change, bringing in the lefty, Salvatore Russo. 5.4 ERA here in 8 1/3 innings. He's allowed 5 postseason runs. MJ Melendez is 0 for 4 today. Interesting strategy to bring the lefty in against Melendez, who's really good against lefties, but he swings and misses there again on the sinker. 7-1 going into the 9th, and the Marlins are going to make an interesting pitching decision, bringing in Emmanuel Clase. And the reason for this is that Clase's had 2 really bad games in a row. The thought process here is that hopefully we can boost his confidence with a good inning. There's one with a Bobby Witt ground out to short. If we can boost his confidence, he'll be in a good spot going into the World Series, and if he struggles, we can just yank him for Johan Duran. Meadows flies it into left. Sanchez is there, and the Marlins are 1 out away from making it back to the World Series. They need just 1 more out. As long as Clase doesn't completely blow it like he has in his last 2 outings. The season for the Mets comes down to Yoan Moncada. 0 for 2 with a walk in the 5th, as the count is 1-1 to start. Clase got him on the cutter, swinging a miss. And now the Mets season comes down to 1 more strike. The count is 1-2 for Moncada. Nobody on, 2 away, 7-1. Your score in favor of the Marlins here in Game 7 of the World Series. Clase looks to get him with the low slider. Doesn't budge. Count evens up now at 2-2. Following pitch is a fastball fouled off backwards, and Yoan Moncada lives to see another pitch. 2-2. Swinging a miss on the cutter. It's over. The Miami Marlins have won it. 7-1. Your final. And the Fish are going back to the World Series for a 2nd consecutive season. And for the first time in this series, we have won a Game 7 after getting eliminated in Game 7 of the NLCS 2 years ago against the Phillies. Then in Game 7 of the World Series last year against the Rays. We finally get over that hurdle. We finish off the job. The Marlins are now 4-0 in elimination games this postseason. We won 2 against Chicago. We've taken 2 against the Mets. And now Minnesota awaits in the World Series. An awesome moment here for the Marlins, an awesome performance, and certainly a few guys who really deserve a shout-out. Edward Cabrera, 6 innings of 1-run ball. I mean, when have we had a better stretch from a starting pitcher really in recent MLB memory? I can't think of one. The dominance that he has really shown over the last 3 to 4 years, not just in the regular season, but in the postseason as well, has been nothing short of incredible. We needed the offense to step up, and I think they did a pretty good job. 7 runs, 10 hits, 3 homers, Rengifo, Landry, and of course, Brian De La Cruz, who was our best position player today, 2 for 3 with a homer and a walk, and an awesome defensive play in the 8th inning. De La Cruz lives for these Game 7s. Again, in our 3 Game 7s, he has multiple hits and a homer in all 3 of them. I doubt there's many, if any, players in MLB history who can say they've done that. So now we get ready for the Minnesota Twins in the World Series. The Twins are not a team who's had a lot of success throughout this series, but they had a great season this year, winning 96 games, the same amount that we did. And I think because they're the number 1 seed and we're the number 2 seed, they get home field advantage. They needed 5 games to beat Baltimore in the first round, but they got the job done with a close 7-6 win to finish things off. Then in the ALCS, things started off rough, getting outscored 16-3 at home against Cleveland in the first 2 games, but they really picked it up. The pitching has caught fire, only allowing 7 runs over the last 4 games, winning all of them, 3 of which were in Cleveland. The American League might be a lot worse than the National League, but the AL Central's tough. The Guardians were the second best team in the AL this year behind Minnesota, and the other teams in that division are pretty solid as well. The Twins have some star power, specifically American League MVP Carlos Correa, who at 34 years old has had the best year of his career with a WAR of nearly 9, and he's been by far the best player on that team in the postseason. They've got a strong pitching staff as well. It'll likely be Brady Sr. who gets to start in Game 1. The Marlins, meanwhile, still undecided. They've got Cabrera on 3 days rest. That's an option. I would also expect Casey Mize or Luis Severino to be in the discussion there as well. That'll wrap up the episode. Next time around, we'll be playing in the World Series. Games 1 and 2 on the road at Target Field against the Twins. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out.